Good evening and welcome to the Job Search Solution, the radio program where we talk about looking for a job, changing jobs, changing careers, hiring. And we begin with a prayer. Dear God, grant us thy peace and thy mercy, thy will be done. So you want to sue your present employer, huh? Well, we'll talk about it. In just a few minutes, Rich Levinsky is going to be with us, as always, talking about consultants in the workplace. Meanwhile, we're going to take 10 seconds to be grateful. Think about 3 things today that made you grateful. It's hard to be unhappy when you're grateful. So think of being grateful. Go. As I say, we're going to talk about suing your present employer. What brought this to mind was I had a candidate that has been out of work for a year. He's an excellent candidate. And I asked him, of course, why he's been out of work. And he said, well, he's been looking for a particular situation and it's been real hard to find. And I bought it pretty well. I had a hiring authority that would be really interested in him because his skills and track record were really good and they were documentable. And I have to admit that my bulldog mouth probably overcame my Mombi rear end. And I was thinking about pleasing my employer and didn't pay as much attention as I should have to why he had been out of work for a year. So we went through the interviewing process, and as part of the interviewing process, as the candidate got closer to the metaphorical altar, the employer Googled the candidate and found out that the candidate had sued his previous employer. It turned out that the candidate sued his employer because while the candidate was on family leave for his 3rd child being born, his boss fired him. And the candidate sued. The candidate won a lot of money, but it was all over the internet that he had sued his employer. Well, no employer likes to see that a candidate has sued his previous employer. No matter how right the employer or the candidate was, no matter how in the right the candidate is, no employer wants to see that a candidate has sued his previous employer. Even if they were right, an employer doesn't want to run the risk of being sued. The candidate has been out of work for a year because he sued his present employer or his past employer. Maybe it was justified. He explained the situation from his point of view. It was, but it doesn't matter. No employer wants to be sued. Don't do it. Unless, well, I guess unless you can get enough money to where you can live for the rest of your life. But this guy's been out of work for a year. And my employer simply told me, he said, we're not going to hire the guy because he sued his last employer. And we don't run the risk of being sued no matter whether he was right or wrong or not. We don't want to run that risk. Find us somebody else. It took me 2 months to find that guy. It is probably going to take me 2 or 3 months to find another guy. It's just not worth it. And the candidate is now so sorry that he did it, so sorry that he sued his last employer, that um, he offered to go to work for the employer on a straight commission basis. He offered to write an agreement that he would hold the employer harmless for any kind of that he wouldn't sue him for any reason. Uh, his attorney, the candidate's attorney, even said that in the state of Texas, it's a at-will state. You can leave for any reason and get fired for any reason. It doesn't matter. Well, most any reason. There are some reasons that are not legal. I'm not an attorney, but there are some reasons. But the employer still wasn't interested, although this candidate is spectacular and could bring millions of dollars to the company. He isn't going to get hired. And he hasn't been hired for the past year, although he's particularly good because of that. So before you sue your present employer, think about it. Think about the repercussions. This guy's about 39 years old. He's got a real career ahead of him, and he's totally messed up. We're going to have a rough time. I'm going to have a hard time representing him to a particular employer because they're going to find out that he sued his last employer, and nobody's going to want to hire him. Don't do that. Just don't do it. You might be right as rain, but it isn't worth it. Leave if you must. Go find another job, but don't sue your present employer. It's just not worth it. Yeah, your attorneys will tell you got a great care reason and it's a good idea and all, but they don't have to live with getting a job. You do. So think about that. All right, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. This is Tony Bashara with the Job Search Solution.